You risk bruising the doctor's ego and being on the receiving end of really bad bedside manner. We all embarrass ourselves at one point or another, and if you live abroad, it's only normal to make mistakes. And of course, that includes going to the doctor. We don't yet know the norms of the culture and the ins and outs of what's done. So first, if you're new here, I'm Diane. This is We in France, where we talk about everyday French life and beyond. And if you plan on seeing a doctor here in France and you want to be prepared, or you're just curious about how things are done in France, keep on watching because we're going to get right into today's video all about the top mistakes foreigners make when going to the doctor in France. Also, before I jump into it, I did a recent video about some differences to expect at the doctor in France, and that was a hit. So you can just check out that part 1 of the video linked above or down below in the description. But let's jump right in with number 1. Okay, taking your wallet out to pay at the beginning of the appointment. And unlike the US, where normally you arrive at your doctor's office and a secretary will have you fill out a bunch of insurance paperwork and pay your copay in advance of seeing the doctor, right after you arrive in the office, most doctors in France, especially GPs or primary care physicians who work alone, will ask for your insurance card and payment at the end of the appointment and handle it directly after they've consulted and examined you. When I first came to France, I thought I was being polite by taking care of, the finances at the beginning. So I took out my wallet right after I sat down in the doctor's office, and he made a joke. "Oh no, put that away. We'll take care of that at the end. Let's get to know each other first." So, after I put my wallet away, we got into the appointment, and I learned right away from that first appointment that payment in France is generally handled at the end. And take note that even though that 70% of the €25 doctor's visit is reimbursed by the Social Security system later for French residents and citizens, you do pay that amount directly in full to the doctor at your appointment. And don't forget your insurance card called La Carte Vitale. Otherwise, you're going to be given a bunch of papers called the Feuille de Soins that you have to submit to the Social Security system for manual reimbursement. And it's a little bit slower, so you want to make sure you have your card on you. All right, number 2, only having your bank card on you to pay. And yes, many doctors' offices, especially doctors who aren't part of a multi-doctor practice, they don't always take credit cards or debit cards due to the high fees associated with the payment processor. They use little machines and they cost money. So always have a backup method of payment, such as good old cash or even a checkbook. Otherwise, you might be asked to run quickly to the ATM so you can pay the doctor. All right, number 3, expecting the doctor to speak English fluently. If the majority of your conversations with French people have been with those in the hospitality sector or those who work in tourism, it might give you the misguided impression that a good deal of French people overall speak fluent English. But actually, that's not the case. Most French people who don't work specifically with tourists do not speak English to a conversational level, and definitely not to a professional level needed to handle an important medical appointment. So yes, while a decent number of French people might speak basic English and be able to say and communicate and even understand basic English phrases, the vast majority of medical professionals will not be able to converse with you in a level of English needed for the details and intricacies of a medical appointment. And this is even more true outside of major cities. So when you're not in Paris and larger cities, it's even less common. And of course, this doesn't mean that no French doctor speaks English, because of course they do. But it's best to not go into the appointment expecting it. And if you need to, bring someone to act as your translator, or at the very least, use a French translation app on your phone or a dictionary app. And if you do want to find English-speaking practitioners or another language, use doctolib.fr. I'm not affiliated with them, but you can just do a search with a filter and find someone who speaks a particular language, including English. So you can just use that filter and find a doctor according to your preferences. Number 4, assuming the doctor will have everything they need for your appointment on hand in the office. And something I've noticed is patients will often be asked to pick up medication or accessories themselves, things needed for the appointment, such as a vial of a vaccine, contrast dye and tubing for an MRI, or even drops for pupil dilation at the ophthalmologist. And you do that before your visit, and you pick it up yourself at the pharmacy because doctors don't always have this stuff on hand. So read your prescription and paperwork sent to you ahead of your appointment, and read it carefully because you never know what might be written on the bottom, such as the case when I had an MRI done at a hospital. I was still required to pick up that contrast dye and tubing that I just mentioned from the pharmacy ahead of time. So be sure to read that prescription that you're given. Make sure you don't miss anything, or you might risk being scolded by fed up nurses, just fed up with patients who don't read everything carefully. And no, I'm not speaking from experience or anything. All right, number 5, thinking the doctor will do your blood work at your appointment. And in the US, it's very common for the doctor to do the blood work in their office, but in France, it's generally done in a lab. So unless your doctor's office is a big practice or in a hospital, blood work is not generally done by the doctor in the office. You go to the lab for that, and they often open around 7 or 7:30 a.m., so the hours are convenient if you need to go before work. And just real quick before getting to number 6, let me take a minute to remind you to subscribe to my channel. Give the video a thumbs up if you haven't already. It really helps me out, helps my channel to be seen by more people and grow. So just click that button, and don't forget the little bell. That way you'll be one of the first people to know when I release a new video. I really appreciate that. And now let's get back into number 6. All right, forgetting that you're the patient and not a client. And sure, while this one can happen anywhere and of course isn't true with every doctor across the board, I do find that a lot of French doctors have this old school kind of mentality where they're in charge and they believe that they know what's best because they're the doctor, they've seen it all, and you're just there as the patient, and that their opinion is really the only one that matters. And keep in mind, you're not a patient or a client of a private business. And I find it's way less common to advocate for yourself at doctors in France. And if you show up with research and you're very well educated about your symptoms and issue, and maybe you have a list of blood work you might think would be helpful, you risk bruising the doctor's ego and being on the receiving end of really bad bedside manner, or at the very least being shut down and told they're the doctor. And I find doctors to be way less fearful of lawsuits in France, so maybe they won't do an extra scan or blood work just to be sure, just to check that they don't miss something. And just be warned that if you try to collaborate with the doctor about what's wrong and what you feel maybe should be done, since you know your body best, even in a respectful and concerned way, it might not be taken well by everyone. So just remember, the doctor's there, they're in charge, you're a patient, not a client, and to get the best care, just describe all of your symptoms as best and as accurately as you can, and really emphasize what isn't feeling right, just so they understand why you need help. And you might really need to drill home the point and insist, but you're there to get the help you need, so don't be afraid about speaking up. Just don't go too far. Okay, number 7, not making your appointment far enough in advance. So depending on where you live in France and what specialist you need to see, making an appointment as a new patient can take months. And no, this isn't a problem unique to France, but it is a problem people experience here as well. So be aware. And to give you some context, there are roughly 102,299 general practitioners and 121,270 specialists in France. That's a ratio of 3.3 out of 1,000 people, according to the World Bank Collection of Development Indicators in 2018. And for contrast, in the US, that doctor to patient ratio, 2.9 doctors per 1,000 people. Now, many doctors allow you to book directly on a site like doctolib.fr, just so you can get a feel for how long waits are. To give you an example, I looked up trying to book an appointment for a gynecologist in Nantes, near where I live, and there are appointments for new patients 6 months out or more. And the worst at this is doctors, gastroenterologists, dentists. But keep in mind, if you have something super urgent, an emergency, your GP, primary care doctor, will refer you, and that wait time will be much shorter. But if you know you need to see a doctor next year, make the appointment now. All right, number 8, saying hello to other people in the waiting room when you arrive. And I mentioned this in part 1. In France, it's commonplace and super polite to greet the people in the doctor's waiting room. Not like that, but when you arrive, you just say a simple bonjour, or even bonjour monsieur dame, if there are men and women waiting. And I'd say in the US, it's more common to discreetly take your seat in the waiting room without acknowledging the others already there, as a way to be respectful of people's privacy and to not draw attention to yourself or to the people already in the waiting room. And in France, it's kind of just the opposite. You know, saying hello is a sign of respect, and it's 100% normal and it's expected, doctors' waiting rooms included. So in France, not saying hello to everyone in the waiting room would be seen as a bit rude. And not individually, just when you arrive, a general bonjour. And as I say, things here are always based on my experience, and they're not going to hold true for every doctor, everywhere in France, for every person. That just goes without saying. And it's not a judgment about what medical system is better, or that France is wrong and the US is right, or the other way of doing things is wrong or right. It's not about that. This video is aimed at helping you just to be better prepared for a doctor's visit in France. One, so you know what to expect when it comes to French medical culture, so you're not stressed by the unknown. And also just in case you're curious to know how things are done in other countries. So if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. Check out the part 1 of doctor stuff in France and just other mistakes. And I'll put that below. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there for today. Have a look at my links down below. I have a newsletter, a liner Francophile merch that I designed, including eco-friendly bags. And I would love if you had a look at the links and followed along with me on my social media handles for more insight into everyday French life and beyond. Thank you so much for watching and being here, and wishing you all a wonderful rest of your week or weekend whenever I post this. And I'll see you right back here on We in France soon. Salut!